Hey, welcome to Breaking the News Plus. I'm joined by my colleague and friend Lou Raguse, one of our investigative reporters here at KARE 11, and we have kind of a serious story to talk about. And the reason we wanted to talk about it tonight on the Plus is that it has a lot of explaining to it, and it's just, quite frankly, outrageous. And it's a story that is kind of the aftermath of the murder of Maddie Kingsbury.
Right.
So, Lou, Maddie disappears in March of 2023. And over the course of a year and a half, her body is found. Her partner, Adam Fravel, or former partner, and the father of their kids, convicted of murder.
Right. And so that murder conviction came back last fall, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole in December.
Okay. But Adam Fravel is the father of Maddie's kids. And the last time Maddie was seen, which I think is important to bring up, was when Maddie dropped those, at the time, but they were 2 and 5.
Yes.
She dropped them off at daycare on March
With
31st with Adam, and then she's never seen again.
He shows up to pick them up, and the first word out of little Ellie's mouth is, "Where's Mom?" And his answer is, "We're going to Grandma's."
Gotcha.
So right from the get-go, he was a suspect. But it wasn't until they found Maddie's body that they were able to charge him. And even before that, there was a legal fight concerning the kids because Maddie's father, David, and stepmother, Kathy Kingsbury, they filed something in family court to get the kids into their custody.
While Maddie's still missing.
While she was still missing. Adam had not been charged. He was fighting them. He wanted he wanted to take the kids away from them, leading all the way up until the day he was arrested finally after they found Maddie's body.
And so the reason Lou and I are talking about this today is there was an assumption made when that murder conviction came down by myself and probably all of you, that once Adam Fravel is convicted of Maddie's murder, premeditated first-degree murder, one would think the kids automatically go to the grandparents. But that's not exactly the case.
Yeah, so the issue is parental rights are not automatically terminated. So he's spending the rest of his life in prison. That's a given. And Maddie's parents, David and her stepmother Kathy, have custody, but parental rights could mean that he would be entitled to visitation from the kids or contact with the kids, be allowed to call them. He could be entitled to medical records, or even what he said in this case is he wanted to talk to their therapist, mental health counselor, to see how they're doing.
He killed their mom.
Exactly, and he was convicted of that. So David and Kathy had to go to court and spend tens of thousands of dollars out of their pocket for a legal battle to ensure that his parental rights are terminated. And finally, recently, hours before it was set to go to trial, Fravel finally voluntarily relinquished his parental rights after dragging him through months of this expensive court battle.
I'm curious, you cover the courts so well, so often, for many, many years. Was it also your assumption that because he's convicted of the first-degree murder of their mother, that his parental rights would automatically be terminated?
Absolutely. I assumed, and that's the key word here. And it just seemed like it would be automatic. It seems like that comes with the judgment of conviction and the sentence to prison.
Yeah, in addition to, here's the things that are going to happen to you. So you had the opportunity to talk to Maddie's stepmom and Maddie's dad, who are caring for these young children now. They're in their custody. I cannot fathom, after the trauma they went through of losing Maddie, that they add insult to this by having to fight the killer to terminate his parental rights. Are they angry?
They have a wide variety of every emotion you could think of, because we always talk about with the sentencing hearing kind of that sense of closure, or if people don't like the word closure, at least that aspect of the case closing and moving on with their their grief and everything that comes with that. At the sentencing, when you watch Adam Fravel walk out that door, they had to, thankfully these hearings were virtual and not in person, but over like a Zoom hearing, they had to be face to face with Adam Fravel several more times after he was sentenced to prison.
As he argues to keep his parental rights.
Correct. Or it's almost like he was stringing it along. Okay. Like he would indicate, like, I will voluntarily relinquish them under certain conditions. Like if you leave open the door for me to have contact with them, or if you do this. And so they could never come up with an agreement because they're not going to agree to that. And so it looked like they were headed to trial. And that would have required hours of testimony. Fravel would have had to testify. And on one hand, they're thinking, well, maybe through this process, we'll get to learn more about how he treated our daughter. And and some of the details of the murder that he never came clean about. But then ultimately, he relinquished at the last minute, and tens of thousands of dollars spent towards these legal costs. Finally, that portion of it is over. The next step for them is the adoption process, which should go through smoothly.
And that's what they plan to do, adopt
Yes.
the kids.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you can't get into detail, and it's frankly, in my opinion, not really appropriate to talk about every detail of these kids' lives. But in short, did they share how they're doing?
Yes.
Okay.
And they said that, and they're okay with us using the first names. It's Ellie and Noah. Okay. Ellie just finished first grade. They're going to camps and daycare over the summer like regular kids. Their word is that these kids are thriving. And their point is that it's harmful to them to have this monster lurking over them.
Right.
And it's not good for them under anyone's opinion.
Absolutely. And it's obvious that as they get older, they're going to have questions about Adam, the killer, their dad.
Right. Because they lost both parents. Their mother was killed and their father was sent to jail. All of a sudden, both parents are gone. And obviously, their father caused that, and they do know that. And the Kingsburys say that they don't tell them every nitty-gritty detail, but they basically know that their mom was killed by their dad.
In terms of, you and I also see when stories that just kind of defy logic happen in the world, communities rally around, families raise money, try to help them, be the village that they may need. Do they have people helping them out to raise these children in this cocoon of love and,
Yes.
and safety?
So Maddie had a lot of friends. She was involved kind of in the Greek system at Winona State when she was in college. A lot of those college friends remain in her life, up until she died. And her mother, Krista, is kind of leading the charge with this foundation, the Madeline Kingsbury Foundation. And that foundation is going to try to push for legislative change. This situation obviously doesn't happen that often, thankfully, but they don't think that anyone else in their position should have to go through a legal fight after this guy is convicted of killing the mother of the kids.
So they're not just stopping at, okay, we finally got this last
Right.
chapter filled because they went through the chapter. They want to make change in the state so nobody else has to do it?
And they see it as, just, it's not that complicated. Just something that they think a law could be changed. And David he's a lawyer, he was a lawyer by trade, bankruptcy lawyer.
Okay.
So they think that a legislative change to say that if someone is convicted of first-degree murder, killing their significant other, the other parent of their kids, that person should automatically have their parental rights terminated once they are convicted or sentenced.
You know your way around the courts and the law. Is that something that you think could happen, that we could make that
Yes,
legislative?
it seems like it could be an easy fix.
Right.
And I would say the only roadblock would be is if lawmakers think it just doesn't affect enough people that it's not worth their time, but it doesn't seem like it'd be a very time-consuming thing.
Right. And certainly if the law were named after Maddie, we've seen legislation come out of horror, so we at least put a stamp at this mark in history like, no, never again.
Right, absolutely. That's how they see it, and they think it would be an easy win for a lawmaker that wants to bring it forward.
For the parents of Maddie, the stepmom and the father and the mom, they've had to move on with this and then have these kids, in their lives. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing that they have grandparents that are around to raise them. I'm curious, because it's so painful and so horrible, why did they want to talk publicly to you about it?
Well, they want Maddie's story to be told, and there's they could help a lot of people through the domestic violence angle. They were not aware of the extent of the domestic violence that was going on within the relationship between Maddie and Adam. They learned a lot of that after the fact, and kind of putting the pieces together. Like one friend would know about something that happened, another friend would know about another thing, but they didn't know the same thing.
Sure.
So once all the stories got put together, it painted a picture of what Maddie's life with Adam was really like that they didn't know about.
Okay.
And so that's kind of the goal of the foundation, is to raise awareness for domestic abuse and offer help to those that need it. And so that's the primary mission of their foundation. And they chose to tell this story because they just thought this is an element that, like we just said, everyone assumes incorrectly that this is not a thing. So they want it to be known so that other people potentially don't need to go through it like they did.
And worth reminding too, with Fravel, he was sentenced to life in prison,
Without
right?
the possibility of parole.
No way he's ever getting out. So they don't have that to worry about.
Correct. I mean, he does still have an appeal. that hasn't been ruled on, or I don't even think they've gone through like the arguments or anything for that yet. But it doesn't look like there's any issue that's going to be troublesome on the appeal. So it's not like they're worried about him winning an appeal and all of a sudden getting set free or anything like that.
Okay. And it gives them the ability to make decisions in the best interest of the kids on their own.
Yep.
Where they're going to go to school, where they're
Yep.
going to go to camp. And
Absolutely.
he doesn't get input on that.
Yeah, and they do have custody. So custody and parental rights are two separate things.
Okay.
But this, they're not going to have to drive to Stillwater and make the kids visit him or anything like that.
Is that something he wanted?
That's what he wanted.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, it didn't get to the point that he was spelling out specifics like that, but he wanted to retain contact with the kids. And they assumed by contact that it would eventually mean visitation. Mm-hmm. And then they were really troubled by he wanted access to their mental health professionals to, in his words, see how they're doing, but that would be checking in with a therapist, for example.
To see how they're doing with what he did.
Exactly. Yeah, the logic doesn't come all the way around. And that's what made it so frustrating for them as well.
Did the kids get any say in this, or are
They
just
don't.
too young?
They're too young. They don't know really what's going on with this kind of thing. So the parents, it's been ongoing. Like I asked if this reopened wounds for them, and they're like, well, the wounds are not really shut, so there's really nothing to reopen. It just hasn't stopped. It's not like the sentencing day was like the final day in court, and then now they had to go through this. And now they'll have to go through the adoption, which it is what it is, and that shouldn't be an issue, like I mentioned.
That could be. I really struggle to find the right word to say. Joy is the wrong word, but things winding up as best they can with the facts of what they are
Right.
when they do adopt those kids.
And the judge in the adoption cases, what they always look at is the best interests of the kids.
Yeah.
And so as long as the judge will, it doesn't really matter what they say. It wouldn't matter what Fravel said, even if he was in the picture. It would just be what's the best interest of the kids, and it's pretty clear that this is what's best for them. They without going into detail, they go on family vacations, they do all the things, they make sure the kids are involved, with friends and stuff like that. So they're living a good life right now, and they're doing the best that they can.
Doing the best they can is what this keeps running through my head too. Well, Lou, I know it's the difficult chapters don't really end, and that's something that you do really well. It's tough to do, but important to tell a story in its entirety.
Yep.
It doesn't just end on sentencing
Yep,
days.
and it's important, like for me personally, to stay in contact with families like the Kingsburys, because it's not just a story. This is their lives, and we pop in on their lives. When something bad happens, and you don't want to just pop out as soon as it's over. It's
Right.
maintain the contact and relationships, and be able to tell stories like this when they want me to.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you, Lou. Thank you so much. That's all for us tonight on Breaking the News Plus. We'll see you next time.